Wanky? Might be cousin.
Hello, I think.
Welcome everyone to What the Force, and welcome to a special interview with Marc Sumerak, who writes for comics, informational guides, promotional materials, video games, and really kind of any of the most recognizable pop culture franchises. Today we will be speaking about the book Droidography, which is coming out this week of the episode release. And I'm incredibly excited to dig into it and to talk with Marc. Hi, welcome, Marc, to the show.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here.
This is pretty exciting for me because I noticed when I went through your background after I heard Droidography was coming out that I had read a fair amount of your comics that you had either written for or edited. Like, your background is quite extensive from, Marvel, especially some DC. You know, you've got a good background from this comic world. So maybe in your own words, how would people know you?
Well, I've been working in the entertainment industry as a writer for about 20 years now, which is a terrifying number when I stop and think about it. But back in 1999, I started as an intern at Marvel Comics. I was a creative writing major in college and started out as an intern at Marvel Comics, eventually got hired on to their editorial staff, where I spent about 5 years working on a book that at the time nobody had really heard of called The Avengers.
Oh,
it was before the movies, before everything had become a multi-billion-dollar franchise. It was just a couple guys in an office making comics with Thor and Iron Man and Captain America. It's lots of fun. And then went on to become a freelance writer. Mm-hmm. And I've been a freelancer since, I think, 2004. And during that time, I've written a lot of comics for Marvel. But I've also written a lot of book projects over the years. Some guidebooks for popular franchises, including Harry Potter, Serenity and Firefly, Ghostbusters, bunch of stuff like that. And then I also work in the video game industry as well. I'm the one of the content writers for Marvel Future Fight, which is a popular mobile game.
Yep.
Another upcoming video game project.
What is interesting about a guidebook? Because I would say Droidography is probably a guidebook, more leaning towards that. It's almost like, like a historical reference in a way, because it's like how it's been developed over time, all of these droids and the backstories and et cetera. But what is interesting about writing something like that?
Well, I think one of the most important things for a fan of a franchise in pop culture is to be able to delve deeply into the knowledge that's come before from all of the various aspects of whatever that franchise is. So you take a world like the Marvel Universe, and you've got 70, 80 years worth of comic books that you couldn't possibly have read every single one of those. I mean, I'm sure some people have, but it's even just getting your hands on all of those is quite a feat. So being able to have information gathered in concise, easy to read places so that people can catch up on important information and familiarize themselves with the characters and the worlds, really important, especially for new readers and new. So if we're talking about the starship Serenity from Firefly, you want somebody to be able to pick up this book, someone who's enjoyed the entire series and the movie, or someone who's never had a chance to watch it and read all about this ship and understand what it is. Maybe it will inspire someone to watch the show for the first time. Maybe it'll inspire somebody to watch the show again and find some things that they might have missed the first time around. And whether it's Marvel or Ghostbusters or Star Wars, all of these worlds have such a rich, vibrant history and so much information to share that putting it out there in a way that fans can do that and can absorb it is really an important thing. Not everybody gets to live every episode and watch, every single movie every time like the hardcore fans do. Sometimes people just get it in bits and pieces, and being able to fill in those gaps is a wonderful thing. Yeah,
it's fascinating what you just explained, because I find that one of the dangers as a longtime fan that I worry about the fandom is that there's a large barrier to entry for younger fans and for fans that are maybe interested in it because of a newer show like The Resistance or like The Last Jedi. They came into the fandom just recently, and then it's like, whoa, where do I even start?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And my recommendation is start with what you're interested in. Right? And this is
Right.
a great thing because, especially aimed at young fans, Droidography, I find that younger fans really do sync up with the concept of droids and like what their stories are within the galaxy far, far away.
Right. Yeah, I agree with that, and I think the droids are kind of a great entryway into that world because they're so ubiquitous. They're everywhere in the Star Wars universe, and they serve so many roles and complete so many tasks, but also they just kind of permeate the background of this world. They see everything, they do everything, but they aren't necessarily the main characters. And so seeing through their eyes gives you a unique look at this world from some characters that maybe don't always get the spotlight.
Yeah, exactly. And they are themselves, so interesting. And I feel like kids in many ways sometimes identify with the experiences of the droids in the saga, like R2-D2 and C3PO. Like they're being dragged along on the adventure, but they're not necessarily consulted for what their opinion is on whether they should be there, and almost constantly complaining the whole way, like, are we there yet? Can we stop being like on this adventure now?
Right.
Yeah.
They're kind of the tweens in the family.
Yeah, exactly. And they're not the ones that are in charge. And so, like, especially Chopper in Rebels was really identified with my son, who's only 6. So,
okay.
He really loved Chopper, and he also really loves R2-D2. I just think that, like, there's something there that kids do grasp onto, but all fans love droids. We have droid builders who dig into like how droids are made, for the shows, and will actually make droids that have, like, say, never been made, in a live action movie or a show before. And so these droids themselves fascinate even older fans. What is it about them? I mean, like that gets people going?
I think a big part of it might be the fact that the droids that we get to meet in the forefront of the saga all have unique personalities, and we get to know them, but we don't know what they do after the rest of the characters leave. We follow Luke, we follow Han, we follow Chewie, we follow Finn, but we kind of have the droids fade into the background once their scenes are completed. Yet we know how much personality they have. We know the kinds of relationships they have with each other. And getting to expand upon that further in our minds is always kind of fun. We get to look at these little hunks of metal and go, man, I really like who they are. I wonder what got them there. I wonder what choices they made and what programming they had along the way that turned them into the cantankerous droid that Chopper became, or the spunky little droid that R2 became. And so, since there are so many kinds of droids out there that we've witnessed, throughout the movies and the TV shows and the expanded universe, it really is fascinating to think that all of these mechanical creatures are populating this universe, each with their own story and each with their own memories embedded in their drives, that stories that haven't been told yet that we could explore. And I think that's one of the reasons that I am so fascinated by them, is because each of them has such a long history, and a history longer than any of the organic characters in the universe. Some of these droids have been around for centuries. And
yeah, we don't even know really. Will we get a little bit of like that background in Droidography about like kind of what that's all about?
Some, yeah. We definitely explore not only the types of droids that are out there, but also the history of droids in kind of a broad sense. I don't want to get too in depth with it before the book comes out, because I want people to be able to enjoy what the content is. But we do.
I like sneak peeks. That's good.
We do definitely explore kind of the origin of what makes a droid, and how they function, and also how they've related to the Star Wars universe throughout different phases of its evolution. So
I'm incredibly excited.
The journey of the droid, not just from a single droid's perspective, but as a whole, how droids have changed in society.
Yeah, that's so fascinating. That is exactly what I love thinking about with droids, especially more recently with, say, the New Republic era of Star Wars, that in canon, they have put more of a focus on saying droids are contributors to society and not just our slaves.
Right. Yeah. And I think that's a really important thing. I think with L3 and characters like that, we're starting to see this idea of droid equality and the idea of we may be artificial, but we're still intelligent. And we deserve to have a say. We deserve to have an opinion. We deserve to chart our own course. And yes, we may have programming or restraining bolts that stop us from doing that. But at the same time, that's no different in some ways than enslavement.
Yeah.
It's been touched upon since the very first movie, this class disparity between organic life and mechanical life. It's as simple as walking into the bar, into the cantina, and we're saying, we don't serve their kind here. And that runs so much deeper than just a single statement,
Yeah.
They don't really explore that for the rest of the movie, but clearly it was a statement on the relationship between how droids are viewed and how organic life is viewed, and they are lesser beings. They're not welcome in a place. They're basically drinking from a different water fountain. This is a class issue between humans, organics, and droids. And that's something that's been built into the Star Wars universe from day one. And it really was fascinating to see how it's evolved.
I love that you pointed that out because, to me, when I first watched that, I was like, as a kid, I thought, wow, these characters that I see as people, characters, are not being treated equally. And then when the prequels came out, I was like, maybe it's because of the Clone Wars and the droid armies.
Sure.
But now I've gone back and said, no, there's actually this class distinction between droids and organics, as you have said. Or maybe the cantina just didn't have plugins.
It's a possibility. They might have just been low on their power generators and couldn't stand them recharging there.
No, I think it was something bigger.
Yeah, and you're absolutely right. I mean, I think the Clone Wars, obviously is a major factor. You've got this propaganda coming from the higher powers saying these droids are evil. Look at them; they're destroying our world, and we must fight back against them. And it paints them as these symbols of villainy. Because secretly they were the other side was the symbol of villainy, but they were hiding behind the fact that this war was being perpetrated by these mechanical life forms. And once we destroy those, and once we destroy the higher power and the advancements in technology, well, then you're in the dark again and we can take you over. But so it was kind of a clever ploy to put the droid out there as the enemy, because once we get rid of the things that were built to protect you, then we can seize power for our.
Yeah, exactly. And, you look back on the Clone Wars as a concept and it's arch evil level villainy, right? It's I've got two disposable armies in a way, and I'm going to put them up against each other. It's really fascinating when you think about how much Palpatine actually did to make that happen. But the constraints on droids existed long before the Clone Wars. Right? Absolutely. So restraining belts, restraining bands, and base programming that says you can't disobey your master.
Correct. Yeah.
So do you go into kind of any of those topics of what that means?
Yeah, we definitely touch upon that. It's in the book, we focus a lot on different classes of droids in the book and focus on different types of droids, but there are sections devoted entirely to droid history, droid evolution, and how droids fit into the scope of the saga as a whole. And because of limited space, we can't cover every single bit of that history, and some of that history has yet to be revealed.
And that's okay, though, but this gives you a good context.
Yeah, exactly. We take the pieces that are out there and we try to stitch them all together and make a nice cohesive narrative for new readers who can pick it up and say, hey, this is the journey that droids have gone on as a culture over the years, and this is where we've left them currently and where they could go in the future. So we try to take a look at the broad scope of the journey.
That's so great, though, because I find I'm one of the only people that cares about droids.
You and me both.
But to the extent that I'm isn't it fascinating that we're getting way more stories about droids as sentience, droids as things that we have created, but that deserve to be treated respectfully.
Right.
Droids that are manumated is a new concept. It was introduced in Legends previously, but in new canon, it's only started with L3, with a background character in Rogue One. In the visual dictionary had that, Cone.
Yeah.
There's this whole concept of manumission, and we've gotten little droid rebellions throughout canon, but nothing big. Like why restraining bolts were created in the first place.
Right. Yeah.
And we get concepts like certain droids can disobey their masters and how that happens and why that happens. It's just really fascinating. And but what does that say? Like always with Star Wars, we are telling stories or we see stories coming out that are plugging into parallels of, universal humanity in a way.
Absolutely.
Like love, acceptance, family. What are we saying when we tell stories about droids?
Well, I think, it goes back to the idea of equality and class separation. There's this idea that even something that isn't like us, even something that was manufactured to do something you would normally ignore, can rise up and do something else, can add more to the universe than they were originally intended to do.
A droid is greater than the sum of its parts.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important and crucial message that the droid can deliver is they may be built or programmed for one specific thing, but if you stop and you pay attention and you let them do more, they can. And if you stop and you give them the chance to go beyond their programming, if you give them the chance to evolve like we have as people, maybe they can show you something different. Maybe they can prove that they are greater than what they were built to do. And I think that's a beautiful thing. And there's so many times in this world where we look at other people that are different than us and we figure that they just can't do what we can do because, hey, we're better. And droids are this whole class of being, artificial or not, in this universe of Star Wars that people look at kind of as a lower life form, and you can't do it, but I can. And droids more and more in every part of the saga are proving how crucial and essential they are and how much further they can go than originally.
Yeah, and I love this new thread of storytelling that we're going down, and you can almost see it happen with new canon related materials that are coming out, that we get stories like Dr. Aphra and exploring almost like evil robots.
I'm a big fan of 000 and BD. They're pretty great.
And then you also get BB-8, who's this like almost cute little kid robot in a way, and new droids that we're getting in Resistance, which I think that the book is going to cover a few of them, aren't they?
I don't think we have any of the new characters from Resistance in there because the book was in development and went to the printers long before a lot of the Resistance stuff was able to be revealed to us.
Right.
So I don't think we managed to get any of the Resistance characters or anything into this particular book. However, there is stuff from Solo covered. There's stuff from the Freemaker Adventures, Rebels.
Okay.
All of those are included. So we're trying to tie in as much as we can, as well as the comics and some of the side novels. We're bringing it all together. So anything that's currently within canon, we're trying to bring in those favorite characters from bits and pieces across the Star Wars galaxy into one shiny place.
So what was your favorite droid to take on in this?
Well, I got to say, for me, it was simply the narrator of the project, who is Roger Freemaker. And for those who don't know Roger, or who have not watched the joy that is the Freemaker Adventures. Freemaker Adventures is the Lego Star Wars cartoon that aired on Disney XD over the last couple of years. And it ran, I think, for 2 seasons, and it follows the Freemaker family, who are a group of mechanics, and they have a battle droid that at some point in their family's history, which I'm sure will be revealed at some point, they salvaged this battle droid, and they cobbled him back together and kind of reprogrammed him from battle droid to babysitter. And he raised these children, these Freemaker children, and kind of serves as their nanny / butler / mechanic / best friend as they traipse across the universe and save the world unwittingly. And Roger is such a joy. He is snarky. He is smart. He is everything you could want in a battle droid. And obviously he gets his name from the classic Roger.
Yes.
But
yeah.
His call name is ROGR. And he is a part of this family. He has taken the battle droid, which is a fairly background kind of droid, and turned him into a real personality. And Roger, over the course of this Freemaker Adventure series, Roger came into contact with so many other droids of different types, as well as popular and important droids in the Star Wars saga, that we kind of felt like he would make a perfect centerpiece for this book. Not only for his sense of humor and his insight, but because he had been personally touched by so many droids across the history of the Star Wars universe along his journey. So we thought it would be really neat to take him as a centerpiece character and look at droids from his view, because he's part of an organic family, but he also has a droid point of view as well. And so he kind of straddles the line between organic and droid and has a very unique perspective.
That's so interesting, because I didn't think that Lego was like integrated into like the larger universe.
Yeah, I honestly I don't know the whole official detail as to whether it is or not. All I know is that when we proposed the idea of Roger, people loved it and they were like, "Let's do this. This is cool," because he's a beloved character by many people across the production side of things. So it was neat to have that opportunity. I don't know if this officially makes him canon. I am not the one who gets to say that or not. That is a question for people other than me. However, in my mind, he is. Because he's so much fun.
That's so good, though. And I love the fact that he has this relationship with his family, and he's like part of the family, even though he is a droid.
Yeah.
And that is, that's something that you see develop with the best good characters in Star Wars. So, for example, Luke and R2-D2 and Rey and BB-8 and, Poe and BB-8, like they are friends. They are compatriots. They're family.
Yep.
And you actually see a good change with Anakin and R2-D2 and C-3PO in how he actually behaves towards them when he starts to turn towards the dark side. Mm-hmm. And it's like, well, the idea is like, he is acting differently towards, everybody, including the person that is lowest in his life.
Yep. Yeah. And that kind of evolution, that relationship between droid and organic, between droid and master, is very telling. You learn a lot about a character and how they relate to their droid. It's like how a person treats their dog. Not to relate droids to dogs, but that type of relationship that you can judge a person by how they treat their pets. Kind of the same way in many ways in Star Wars is that if a person has a strong relationship with their droid and treats them like part of the family, you usually get a good vibe from that person. And if they're kicking MSE droids or mouse droids around the Death Star, that's usually a good vibe of how they are going to treat other people as well.
Exactly. Yeah. It's so funny that you referred to droids as dogs, because Dave Filoni has referred to describing R2-D2 as the family dog and Chopper as the family cat.
I can see that. I can absolutely see that.
in just a way like how they behave and like how different they are towards the family. They are beloved, but they are not quite as, fundamental to the operations of the family. I disagree, but they aren't the stars. And, when are we going to see a droid-centric story?
Right.
Do you think, Mark?
I think it's well overdue. In my opinion, though, many of the stories that have already been told are droid-centric stories in their own way. I mean, none of the things that happened in these stories could have happened without the droids that are a part of them. If you remove BB-8 from A Force Awakens, that story doesn't happen. If you remove R2 from A New Hope, that story doesn't happen. These characters are so crucial to the story as a whole, and they may not be in the spotlight the whole time. They really are their stories. However, in terms of a story just focusing on a droid, I would love to see that. I would love to just see the droid get the spotlight, or a group of droids get the spotlight. We're getting more and more of that with characters like K2SO and L3, these droid characters that are really shining through in these scripts and in these projects, that you kind of go, man, I want to see more of them. I think that day is going to come. At least I hope so.
I think so. We did get one comic, which is the C-3PO pre-Force Awakens comic that came out after The Force Awakens, and it's centered on C-3PO.
It was the one how he got his
we did get
arm,
one
right?
comic. Yeah, his red arm comic. Yep. Yeah. So we have seen that story, but I think from a long running either like movie, TV, where one of the main characters is a droid. We have yet to kind of see that. K2SO, I think, is the closest that we've gotten to a personality that, in the ensemble was equal parts to almost anybody else in the ensemble.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I loved about Rogue One so much, is it truly was an ensemble cast. Even though Jyn was kind of the core hero, it was such a well-balanced supporting cast around her that it really felt like a family unit as opposed to just a star and some supporting characters.
Exactly. Yeah.
Exactly. And if we really want droids, we'll always have the Droids animated series. We can always dive back into the 80s and double feature that in Ewoks. It'll be great.
Yeah, I
or not.
Or not. I don't know. I think that I'm just extremely excited to see more droid stories, and that's why I spend time on my podcast actually talking about droids, because I feel like it's a part of the storytelling that is maybe not being explored actively enough, except for, say, in the Dr. Aphra comic and around her, because her job revolves around them. Mm-hmm. And occasionally storylines will focus on those, like the ones in Rebels with Chopper and AP5. Right. But, we're not quite there from hey, this is a big activity yet.
Right.
With the exception of, say, Daniel Jose Older's Last Shot, mm-hmm. where we got L3's a little bit of L3's backstory, and the reverse droid logic, which is a little dark, I would say, probably for a droidography. Right. But, the idea that organics want to replace their bodies with droids, which sort of mimics Grievous.
Right. Yeah. And that's super creepy. And we do touch a little bit. We have moments where we talk about how suddenly fashionable it is to have a limb that's replaced by a robotic limb, or to swap out pieces here and there to make your life a little bit longer and a little bit easier. We look at the idea of kind of the droid as an avatar, where you see, like in Canto Bight, there's the droid body walking by with the hologram head of a person who's controlling it elsewhere. There's those types of things that we can look at and see how humans are suddenly finding that droid is the new black. It's trendy to be a droid, and kind of modeling themselves over these creatures that have been a part of their universe for so long.
Exactly. So how has this book added to the Star Wars universe?
Well,
is it just expanding information that maybe was hinted at previously? Or how is it how is it expanding everything?
I think the real expansion comes just from insight. I think we're taking a look at these characters that you've seen before, maybe in the background, mm-hmm. maybe you had questions about what they do, what they are, why they were built, what their purpose is, what their programming is, that kind of stuff. We're taking a look at them a little bit more in depth, and not only talking about what they do, but who they are. So from Roger's perspective, Roger, in the Freemaker Chronicle, or in the Freemaker Adventures, he makes he's telling a story about himself during the process of these cartoons. He's writing a biography. It's called From Trenches to Wrenches, and it's about how he went from being a battle droid in battle during the Clone Wars to how he became a mechanic for the Freemaker family. And so this kind of acts as almost a sequel to his autobiography, From Trenches to Wrenches. It's more of his way of saying, I've told my story. Now I want to tell you the story of all these other droids, all of these other guys and gals that I've met during my journey that you've probably just brushed by and paid no attention to. I want to tell you who they are, what makes them tick, what they like, and why they're out there doing what they do. It's not just programming. And so this gives them a little bit more personality. It lets you take a look at these droids, not just based on function, but based on their totality. It's more than just what they were built to do. It's who they are. And I think that's really what we add with this book is the ability to look a little bit deeper at these mechanical life forms and show more than just their pre-programmed function, but kind of the entire look at them as beings.
Yeah, that's great. I love the idea that as we allow droids to retain their memories and not wipe them, they develop things like creativity and like become artists and like, you know, writers. Like I'm writing my autobiography. That's amazing. Like it humanizes these droids so much and makes you think about how cruel wiping a droid actually is.
Right. Yeah. And you know, there's that idea, like you said, there's the idea of, you know, wiping their memory. And we see that a lot in the Star Wars universe where characters have their drives wiped and they have no memory of certain events for security reasons, sometimes for traumatic reasons, and other times maybe they were brutally destroyed and they just want to build them from scratch and repair them without any knowledge of what happened to them before. So they'll continue
the horror of what happened
over and over. You know, if you wipe their drive, you can send them back into battle and they'll get killed again. And then you can wipe their drive and do the same thing and they'll never catch on to what's happening to them. But it is kind of an awful practice. The idea of taking away everything but your core functions and starting you from scratch over and over and over is something that as humans would be horrifying to deal with. And, you know, the idea of having to reclaim and rediscover identity every time is bizarre. And then there are these droid characters who haven't been wiped and have seen the entire journey unfold and have seen their brothers and sisters in droiddom wiped and have had that experience taken away from them, and they can look at it and go, wow, we've got to do better than this. You know, how do we stop this cycle?
Yeah, and they can experience emotion, fear, pain, like they have the whole plethora of emotions, and yet you choose to wipe them.
Yeah.
It's like
bizarre.
It's very bizarre from a human looking at this Star Wars universe and saying, like, why does this exist this way? And why do most people treat them like appliances?
Well, and that's exactly, you hit the nail on the head, is there are two ways of looking at the droid. Are they something that is there to perform a function and nothing more? Or are they a being? And I think there's a real distinction. I think a lot of members of the organic community in that universe look at them as appliances, like you said. They look at them as a tool to get the job done, but don't really care about the fact that they can develop sentience, the fact that they can feel, the fact that they can remember. They look at them as a toaster. You will burn my toast, no more. Memory wipe, reset, better toast. That's what they're looking at. And they're not thinking that perhaps this delightful little toaster droid has made friends with the blender droid, and now that blender droid has lost his best friend. It's just not fair. And also not real, because I don't think we have toaster droids or blender droids in the book. But just for an example,
we have cooking droids in the Star Wars universe.
We have all kinds of droids in the books, and that's what's really fun. Is we got to go from, you know, war droids to waitress droids all the way through. And
yeah, it's like any function an organic doesn't want to do, there is a droid for.
Don't want to die in battle? Here's a droid. Don't want to cook your grilled cheese sandwich? Here's a droid. It's great. Don't want to put out fires? Yeah, we'll retool a battle droid.
Oh my goodness. Like, there's so many awesome things about what you just said in that, like, just little rant. Like, I agree with all of it. And it's stuff that I have personally seen in the saga and in the extended canon. And there isn't in-universe answers to why the universe is so weird like this. And that's what I'm super excited to see, is like, is that where we're going? Right. And I hope we are, you know?
And I'm not sure that the book necessarily gives in-universe answers as much as it gives an in-universe perspective. You know, because Roger isn't necessarily a droid that would have all the answers, but what he has is his experience. What he has is a number of droids that he's met over the years, a number of battles and experiences that he's been a part of, that he can look at in their totality and say, this is what I feel. This is what I've gone through, and how I can put the pieces together to form a narrative about the droid experience.
And and maybe perhaps what it means to him.
Right, exactly. And he's not a droid who's shy of telling people what it means to him.
Exactly.
He is ready to put it out there for the world. He does not hold back. If he has an opinion, he is glad to share it. And that's, I think, one of the things that made him so much fun to write.
I'm so excited to see it and to read the story, because what I love about what you've just said is that it's not only informational from a certain point of view, but it is also a story in and of itself from this one character's perspective. Right. So that's great.
I was going to say, and that's what we really wanted to do, is to set it apart from some of those other guidebooks out there. There are a lot of wonderful guidebooks to the Star Wars universe, and those DK encyclopedias are gorgeous and so well written and so fact-filled that you don't even want to compete with that. And so when we were putting together the project, we were trying to think, how can we make this different? How can we make it more than just another encyclopedia with pictures of droids and facts about what they do? And we kind of went, man, this has got to be a story. This has got to be about personality. This has got to be about the journey. This has got to be a deeper look into who the droids are, not just what they do. And that's when it all started to come together.
That's great. So could you talk a little bit about what went into this book, from research or working with people at Lucas to get answers? Sure. Did you get to write some of it and describe it yourself from Roger's perspective?
Much like everyone out there, I've always been a big fan of the Star Wars. Anybody listening to this, I'm sure, is a huge fan of this stuff. So that helps. When you're going into a project like this, having the core knowledge already in your system is a good thing. But then it's rewatches and rereads and deep dives into material, going back and trying to get your hands on anything that's considered in canon that is a part of the larger narrative. So whether it's reading short stories or comics to figure out, rare, obscure droids that maybe one or two people loved from whatever side book project was published 6 years ago, but that's worth exploring, finding those types of characters and those types of droids, as well as just learning more and more about the main core droids that we're all so familiar with, whether it's battle droids or probe droids or astromechs, and finding out the variations and what makes different personalities tick. For me, it's all about just immersing myself in the material. So, gosh, if I could count how many times I rewatched the movies and went into, old episodes of the Clone Wars that I haven't seen for a few seasons, and Rebels rewatches, and reading, diving into the Dr. Aphra comic to learn more about 000 and BT, and figuring out all kinds of things about bounty hunters. It was really just a deep, immersive dive into the existing material. And then working with the team, I had my editor is from Insight Editions. The book is coming out through Harper Festival, but it was co-developed with Insight Editions. So I got to work with my editor, Chris, on all the types of droids we wanted to include and figure out, what was logical in terms of the amount of space we had, where our focus should be in each section. And then I had the joy of going out to Lucasfilm, to their headquarters in San Francisco, for a day, because the book was being written at a time where Solo had not yet come out. And so there was still a lot of mystery around L3 and her piece in the puzzle, but it was essential to this book. So I had the good fortune of going out there and meeting with some of the folks from Lucasfilm Publishing and sitting down and getting to not only learn about these characters in advance and their impact upon the universe, but also getting a pretty awesome tour of Lucasfilm and ILM, and getting to see all my childhood fantasies come to life in person, which is pretty wild. So I'm very grateful for that. And then, so it was, the process was a long one. It took a bunch of months to put this book together, both from a writing standpoint and then an engineering standpoint, because the book has a lot of special features included, flaps that flip open and things that move and all kinds of neat stuff to keep people interested as they read through the text. And lots of great art of these droids. Some beautiful, beautiful character art, all hand-drawn. So it's not stuff that's taken from photos of props or 3D renders. These are all hand-drawn images of these droids, lovingly crafted. Beautiful, beautiful stuff.
That's wonderful. So you touched a little bit on what this Star Wars, like writing this book and digging into this experience has been like. Did you want to talk a little bit more about like how it personally has affected you?
Yeah, it's funny because as far as I can remember back, droids have been a part of my Star Wars experience. The very first Star Wars toy that I remember owning was the Droid Factory, which was this little wedge of plastic that had little rubber pieces of various types of droids back in the 80s that you could kind of use like this weird little crane to drop down and pick them up. And then you could assemble your own droids out of it. And there were pieces that you could put in R2-D2, but you could also make a dozen different droids with weird arms and legs. And it was really, really cool. And that was like the first Star Wars toy that I remember. So for me, droids have always been part of the experience. And as I went on in life and continued to watch Star Wars, droids took on a different meaning to me. When I was young, they were just cute and silly, beeps and boops and whirs and clicks, and they were just goofy little characters who brought comic relief to movies that I already liked for other reasons. But as I got older and started to realize some of the differences in the Star Wars universe between organic life and mechanical life, and started to understand some of the story being told very subtly through the movies about how these characters relate, it took on a whole different life. And a lot of the stuff we've already talked about over the course of the discussion about how the relation impacts the universe as a whole started to come to light, and it made me take a different look at these characters and their place in the universe. And so getting the chance to actually explore that as a writer and to dive deeper into that world and really put my head into the space of a droid and see how they would view the universe was a real joy.
That's amazing. I feel very similarly to you in that like there's so much to explore, and I love these stories, and it always makes me question more and more about the droids, especially make me question how layered is the storytelling in Star Wars and how deep does it go? Because it seems like when you start to dig into droids, you're like, wait, there's like more. There's way more in here. And it's all subtle, to your point. That's great. Like, and I love that you see that and that you appreciate that. And I think that love will come in to droidography.
I sure hope so.
So, what are you working on next after droidography that you could share out?
Well, I'm working on a lot of stuff right now. I'm working on some comic book projects that haven't been announced yet. I'm working on Marvel Future Fight, which is a popular iOS game. And I think it's on Android as well. It's a mobile game through Marvel Games and Netmarble. I'm working on a couple of new video game projects that'll be coming out next year that should be announced relatively soon, I'm hoping. And then a couple of new books that should be very, very exciting. So nothing that I can announce yet, nothing that has been officially put out there into the world. But I've got 3 or 4 new books on the slate, all of which I am very excited about and touch a bunch of different and very familiar pop culture universes.
That's great.
I wish I could name them all for you right now, but sadly the contracts don't allow me to do so.
No. That's okay. I would just say, pay attention to Mark, and I'm sure you'll announce it as soon as it's available to come out. And Droidography will be out this week that this episode comes out. So if you've been interested in hearing more because of our conversation, do check it out. I'm extremely excited to get my copy because of what we've talked about, but also because I knew how layered and in-depth the droid storytelling is in the Star Wars universe, and we just need an opportunity to hear more stories.
Amen.
So, Mark, where can people find you if they're looking for you out there on the web?
My website is www.sumerak.com, which is my last name, if you can spell it, Sumerak. So I'm pretty easy to find. And then I'm also on the Twitter and the Facebooks and the Instagrams, all linked off of my webpage. So it's easy to find me.
I'll link to those in the liner notes in case anyone is looking for them. Thank you for coming on the show, and I look forward to seeing more stories from you in the future, hopefully.
Oh, thank you so much. It's an honor to be a part of this universe, and it was a real pleasure to be on this podcast. Thank you so much for having me.
And with that, thank you everyone for listening to What the Force. This has been our episode on Droidography with Marc Sumerak. I'm very happy that he was able to make it on the show. This was such a great discussion, and I'm looking forward to seeing what other droid stories we hear in the future. What the Force is available on most podcasters at whattheforce.ca, as well as on Twitter, WT Force Show. We're also available on YouTube, and make sure to check out our video on Droids, available on YouTube now. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I hope you find a droid story you love. And remember, no one notices a droid.